All right. Welcome back, everybody. So here I am, episode, I think 116. I'm with my good friend. We just kind of called each other colleagues or coworkers, Craig O'Neill. Welcome.
Hey, thanks,
Thanks
Kim.
for
It's so
being
great to be
here.
here. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We have a lot to talk about, y'all. And the two of us are really good at just chatting it up. We just said that we should have started our recording 5 minutes ago. But look, before we jump in, I want to welcome you back to the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast and give a shout out to our awesome sponsor, Repair Pal. Thank you for sponsoring this podcast. You guys can learn more about Repair Pal at repairpal.com/shops. They have their certified network of shops that are trusted by millions of customers each month. Go visit that site, learn more about them. Thank you, Repair Pal. And thank you, Craig, for being here. So in case, all right, so let me ask, am I the first in the network to have you on as a guest? Obviously not Carm. He doesn't count.
Yeah, Karma obviously first. Now, since the show Speak Up started, definitely the first. Although, well, we had Matt on in episode 2 for us, and I was on one from Chris Cotton about a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I listened to your first and your third, but for some reason I skipped the second. I loved the title of the third one, so I jumped right in, and that's why
Nice.
I didn't know Matt was already on there. All right. Well, I thought I was going to be like, the first, but well, he was on yours.
Yeah, this is
Anyway.
my first time being a guest for a colleague on the Aftermarket Radio Network, which is very special.
Yeah. So everybody definitely go take a listen, go, follow and pay attention, because he's talking about communication, which when I first found out, I'm like, that is brilliant. Like, there's so much to unpack there, and we're going to unpack some things here, but you're never going to be short. I just think about just the daily conversations we have. You can do a whole episode on, oh, let me tell you about the chat I had today. Right. Like, kind of like, do you follow that guy, Joey Swole, on Instagram? He's a fitness enthusiast, like, this big macho guy. And people are now sending him inappropriate, not in a bad way, but like people that are recording stuff in the gym that they shouldn't be doing.
Oh.
And they'll send it to him, and he like shares it live and goes over, this is what's wrong with this. Like, people stop doing this. This does not belong in the gym. And, it's people that are recording themselves working out, and they get mad because somebody walks in between. But anyways, I feel like, he's dissecting that stuff. You can just be, like you said in one of your episodes, diagnosing conversations and how can we do this better. And
yeah, let me clarify. I'm not recording every session I sit in on or conversation that I'm in order to make an example of it.
For sure. No, but good ones as well as some that, it goes both ways. Hey, let me tell you about this great conversation I had today.
I constantly get those moments of inspiration. Yeah, I do a lot of walking. The rucking is the thing that I've been talking about. I don't follow that Joey guy that you mentioned, but I've been following Michael Easter, author of The Comfort Crisis, and been recommending that book to everybody I talk to lately. Changed my life. Actually,
put that in our show notes.
Oh, yeah. Good one. The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, and a follow-up to that, Scarcity Brain, something especially an audience in marketing would probably be very interested in understanding some of the baseline things going through our minds that make us do a certain behavior. It's fascinating. Michael Easter's one of those authors, rare, and I'm going to be talking about this in an episode in the future too, about a journalist and how a journalist presents things. And I, as an author, I think he's brilliant in the way that he dissects information and puts it into a meaningful way, but also knows how to tell a story to make it impactful. Just really powerful things. But I walk a lot. This is where I was going with this. I walk a lot, and my wife will go with me. And that shoulder to shoulder time is some of the most inspirational times together as a couple, but even sometimes when I'm solo too, just the thought process time. But that's an amazing way to get onto a different train of thought than the normal day-to-day stuff. Just walk in nature and talk about whatever's coming to mind, the feelings and how things are going with the kids who are my family are all teenagers now, by the way. We have a lot to talk about.
Welcome to the, yeah. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, but it's really important. I think it's different even than a face-to-face, even in this format, like every different format. When you start thinking about all the different communication interfaces we enjoy today, there are many.
Yeah.
Many of them are truly an interface with a screen and all these things. It's different in every single one. And some of the skills that we have in one might not be as strong as we have in another. The comfort level is different. The anxiety is different. The way it's flowing is going to be different. It's wild. And I just find it really bizarrely fascinating. And there's so much that I've learned in Toastmasters these last 5 years. I've been in Toastmasters, the journey I've been on working with Chris at Autoflow, all the things that have happened in my life in a communication space, very specifically. I kind of like geeking out on this topic. And I think that if people are interested even a little bit and they check out the show, they're going to learn a little bit every time. And I love how Carm always says, listen to learn one thing.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those topics where at first you may think, I don't really know. But once you just dive into a little bit, you start pulling that thread. It kind of pulls you in and you start realizing, and we learn so much about ourselves. You mentioned Toastmasters. I joined with y'all on that.
You are a founding member, Kim, and I want you to always know this. It's deeply appreciated.
I carry that with such pride. I do. And I loved it so much that JR is now in it. And if Caroline is not in it yet, she will be. And
nice.
She may be listening to this going, I am. So we just moved her up to the chief marketing officer for us.
Oh, good job.
We have to expand our team of teachers. We've been doing that a little bit at a time. So Caroline is one of our instructors now. And
brilliant.
Anyway, so I want to get her in there. But Toastmasters was really great. And Brian has even said, I've noticed how it's helped you get rid of the ums and that sort of thing.
The first thing people see.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you haven't ever heard of Toastmasters, we created a club. We actually called it Remarkable Results Toastmasters. And Carmen, Tracy are in there too. And we'll definitely have to put something in the show notes here. You can come as a guest free as often as you want. No pressure, no obligation. And Kim, that's obviously true for anybody, and yourself included. We meet on the first... Back? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first and third Thursdays are when we meet. First Thursday at 2 p.m., the third Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we get together to practice public speaking skills. We don't scrutinize each other harshly. We laugh a lot. Yeah. It's a good time.
Very fun.
Yeah, everyone goes to become a better communicator. One of the first things you will learn, and I say this in the show in one of our early episodes as well, the first thing you will learn is how to become a better listener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that was a secondary reason with the podcast is, we always come in with like our bulleted notes of, hey, I know I want to talk about this. I know I want to talk about that. But when you rely on that, you lose the real magic and just getting yourself in tune to paying attention and listening. And, I know you're a big fan of these people too, right? Dale Carnegie.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
John Maxwell. They all talk about those things like listening and helping people feel special and leave them better than you found them. And all that kind of great stuff, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, but it's Toastmasters that helped me to do that. And then my other thing that I took from Toastmasters, I wouldn't say I'm there yet, but I can tend to ramble and really need to be concise in what I'm saying. And so that was one of the things that I went in knowing that I really want to get better at the ums and those little fillers.
Sure.
I think I got rid of and then I replaced it with maybe so.
Yeah,
and then had to work
There's always a new one that crops in there somewhere. Yeah. That rambling is, I'm pretty sure, why Chris referred me to Toastmasters when I first started with him. I tell the story. It was one of the episodes. I can't remember which one it is already. There's only 3. I should be able to remember. There's more coming. I can't imagine. But I was in a web meeting with Chris Cloutier and Jeremy O'Neill, O'Neal for Jeremy.
Mhm.
We're not related, we think. But
You never
Jeremy,
know.
dude, he's one of my early inspirations too. I'd known him before I had networked efficiently with anyone in this industry. I'd been aware of his stuff. And so I have pressure on in this web meeting where I'm supposed to show some stuff about Autoflow. I think I was talking about at the time with a client who had 3 shops. So big deal. And I wanted to impress everybody there with how smart I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept talking, I guess, for quite a while. Because the main advice that I had from Chris later on is about being able to shut up and pause.
Yeah.
Toastmasters will help you out.
Yep. It sure will. You know, it's funny to me. In the short time that I was there, I've just unpacked 3 or 4 different lessons that I took from it. But you just pointed out another one, and it was the power of the pause.
Oh, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. And the thing that I learned, and this, I almost should let people discover this for themselves, but the reason it's hard to pause for most people, and this I found was very true for me, is you have a fear of losing control.
Mm-hmm.
Giving that space where someone else might come in is uncomfortable.
Very much so. And when that realization hit me, I was offended and kind of ticked off because it was true.
Yep.
And she might kill me for saying this, but our Caroline,
Sure.
I mentor her a lot. And in grooming her to move into the CMO position, there was a time where we talked about that because she talks a lot. We are practically the same person. She could be my daughter. She could literally
She's
be my
Chris's
daughter,
cousin.
actually. She's Chris's cousin.
Yes.
That was the craziest thing. She recognized the name. Something came through an email.
Such a small world.
Or something happened. And she was like, wait, you know him? I'm like, yeah. She said, he's my second cousin.
It's hilarious.
It blew my mind. And they finally just met in person, I think, for the first time. Like
yeah,
last
it was one of the
year or
shows.
something.
Yeah, I don't remember which one. ASTA or Apex or one of those. Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to ask you, when we're talking about communication, and I just showed you 2 books. We all have people that we are inspired by. You know, you were thrust into this world, this topic of communication from Chris, from that meeting that you had. But who would you say, like, who are you listening to on your podcast? Who's inspiring you? What books are your favorite ones? Like,
such a good question. Yeah, I already mentioned Michael Easter, and so it deserves merit mention again. I actually even started listening to his podcast. He has this little subreddit group too. It's called 2% by Michael Easter. And that has been my chief listen. When I'm on a ruck lately, he does an episode Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's basically his job, is to write and to do that. It's a ton of work. And I don't think everyone understands, like, Kim, you're doing this and I'm trying to do a show, and Matt Fonzo is doing a show, Chris Cotton, like all these people doing these shows. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure the content is good. You could hop on, just hit record and riff, but that's not going to be so great. Having content of something research studied and a guest lined up, scheduled, find the time to actually reschedule and schedule again. Dude, what you need
You're
to do.
stressing me out just talking about it.
I know it's a lot, but so Michael Easter, he's doing this stuff, and I love the whole premise of his 2% thing, because where that 2% comes from is a study that's observed people at airports, especially, I believe, where there's an option for an escalator or the stairs. 2% of people will take the stairs because they know it's better for them, even in those moments.
2%.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so it already is such an interesting concept. I've just been dissecting, like, why is this such an engaging podcast? Why am I so enthralled in what he has to say right now? Well, one, it's speaking to me right now. I'm on a new fitness regimen, trying to get in shape in a better part of my life. I'm turning 40. It does things to you.
Wait, you can't just drop that in here like that. We always talk about fitness and stuff. Like, give me the quick super, what's the new thing?
Oh, so, all right. So this story goes back, though. And look, this inspiration for the Michael Easter thing had a earlier seed. It was at the Institute's summit in St. Pete It was in 2022. There was the inaugural summit for them.
I was there. Yep.
What? Yes, you were. And what a lineup of speakers, right? This was a great lineup. So Chip Eichelberger was the keynote that went first.
Yeah.
And he said something that had been that just immediately hit me like a bolt of lightning. And when a speaker can do this, this is a powerful thing. And you don't know this. As speaking in a context on a keynote, you don't get to know what's important to everybody in that audience. That's a key thing about a keynote. And Chip said something, though, that statistically made a lot of sense to use as an introduction topic. 1 in 3 Americans, he told us, are pre-diabetic. And you know who had just found that out about himself? This guy.
Really?
Really? Yeah, because most people think diabetes would be something for people overweight. But guess what I stopped doing when I stopped being an automotive technician in a transmission shop and became a software guy in this nice chair?
Yeah. Yeah.
I sit a lot and working from home. I don't even have to leave the house some days, but I can stay mentally engaged to the wee hours working on screens. And it's work, to be very clear, but it is not physical at all. And what I've learned is you could have a healthy diet, a pretty healthy diet, but it is not so much the diet. And it was actually Michael Easter made this point in one of his podcasts the other day. It's not what you eat as much as the couch time. And I have a lot of that sedentary time. Turning 40, things happen.
So that's why you started walking, rucking.
He mentioned the comfort crisis. Chip Eichelberger mentioned that book. That was the first mention of it. And I had written it down. And then Chris, my boss, had a few months later, he listens to Dave Ramsey a lot. And he bought access to an event that Dave Ramsey did. And I'll be darned, in Dave Ramsey's thing, he mentions this book, The Comfort Crisis. And so, all right, circle it. Went on Amazon, ordered it, got it, read it. And I hardly put it down. I have 2 copies of it, so I can always lend one out when I have somebody here. But it's such a powerful story. But that's just an example of something that inspired me, right? It's actually a series of things. And I have a whole nother episode I'm going to be doing on this topic too, is I've had conversations recently with a shop owner who, lo and behold, this small little industry of ours, I had reached out to him after hearing him on Carm's podcast. But unbeknownst to me is he was in a 20 group with Chris at the time. I wasn't working for Chris. I was still in my shop. He had also been plugged in with another coach of mine, Dennis McCarron, and George Kingman, and several names that are now household names for me and Chris and our company. I realized that this one individual had dealt with all of us at different intervals and had inspired him in some way, in little ways. So there's this amplification effect that your network has, which is profound. You aren't the only one that's going to be doing an impact. You amplify something someone else is doing in ways you'll never know about. Right. So profound.
That is.
I love hearing about those stories once you realize, oh, you know so-and-so? Dude, yeah, you do. Oh, it's just amazing. Just amazing.
Okay. But wait. Did you answer my question?
Michael Easter's got to be the thing. But
no,
dude,
but
yeah.
you distracted me with your new workout thing. What's the new workout thing?
Oh, the new workout thing is rucking. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's not like new. You've been doing that for a little
while. It was new for me on my birthday, my 40th birthday. I asked for a rucksack because I had just watched that. And so August 23rd last year, turned 40. I'll be, cool story here. And I'll be talking about this too. My birthday this year, this month, be 41. I'm doing a marathon with my rucksack up north in Traverse City.
What?
Yeah, this is not something Craig O'Neill has done, a marathon of any capacity, but doing it with a rucksack too. And I have rucked a 5K every single day this year in the calendar year 2024, every day, rain or shine.
I guess August last year. So just a year. It's only been a year, but I swear it seems like you've been doing that so much longer. Okay.
No. Yeah.
All right.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. It's time is weird.
Time is weird. Hey, what was your first thought so I know that in your first episode, you and Carm kind of unpack how this came about, and you were walking out the door and Chris, like they were talking about doing a podcast and they were like, there's your guy. So when you got the first
When they mentioned it to me for the
When they
first time.
mentioned it to
Yeah.
you for the first time, what went through your head?
Yeah. So it went like this. So Carm said, I want to come talk to you. Don't leave from the booth beforehand. And Chris should be there too. And I
And
thought
did
that
you
was
know
very
what
tactful.
he was talking
No,
about?
not a
Okay.
clue. Not a clue. And the idea of hosting a podcast wasn't even a imagination concept in my brain
Okay.
at all. So when they came to the booth area in the trade show where me and Chris were, and he said, we'd like you to host a show on our network. I was like, I think, Kim, this might have been one of the few times in my life I can claim to be speechless. I was just like, me?
Yeah.
Isn't that the first reaction? And I think an appropriate one too. I consider myself just a student myself in so many ways of communication that I could even be recognized in any capacity to have something to offer anyone on there. I got the wrong guy. Like Chris would be great. But no, like this is a new adventure. And I just feel so affirmed and humbled.
Oh, that's a good way to put that. I love it. I feel affirmed. Well,
Yeah.
you know what I love about it, what made so much sense to me when I first heard, I said, that makes sense to me. And here's why. You're easy to talk to.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I think a good communicator, you know, there's all the one-liners from our friends here, Dale Carnegie, John Maxwell, Michael Easter, all these people have these great quotes and all that good stuff. But for me, when I think who is a great communicator, like had defined that? Who is it? Your name always pops up when I because I do think crazy things like that. Like who thinks these things? But I ponder these things, and when I think about communicators, because in our business, think about how much every business has tons of communication, but we literally that's what we are. We're podcasters, we're bloggers, we're social media people, we're writing all kinds of content. And we're communicating internally as well as externally, teaching classes. So the topic of being a better communicator comes up more often than people might think.
Yeah.
And so as I'm going through that stuff and I'm giving resources to my team, I'm like, I want you to read this book. I want you to listen to this podcast. So, you know, all this stuff. When I think about who is a good communicator, what does that look like? For me, it's who makes it easy. And I love all the things about leave. You know, I always taught my son, when you go to somebody's house or you go here, you go there, you always leave things better than you found them. Well, that's what Dale Carnegie is talking about as well. Like leave a conversation where somebody's feeling better.
Yeah.
And I also think it's just that it's easy. So
the coolest things happen when you start to put other people in front of yourself, more important than you, in your mind and in your heart. Something automatically happens when that's genuine. I think I was very fortunate to have some very good examples from a very young age in the family business. I would sit in the summer times and listen to our service advisor talk. Like that was the only air conditioned room in our shop, by the way, on a hot summer day. So that was where kid Craig, kid Sean, my brother would sit. We'd sit in the office there and just listen to the conversations happening, which isn't something kids do today. I'm holding up a phone. If you're listening to this, they sit there. They don't get bored, and they don't just listen to the way a person connects with another person.
Yeah.
And what I learned when I was later working in that post is that people will talk. People will talk if you give them the chance to share a bit more about them. And they will walk away from the conversation with you having said very little. You say very little.
Yeah.
And they will feel like they had the best conversation in the world.
Well, you just said something super important. If you give them the chance.
If you give them the chance. And do we do that a lot in our business? I actually had arguments some days in the family business because like any small family business, we have arguments, folks. That's another episode. But the argument was frustration from some of the technicians who needed direction on what job to go, which was my responsibility that I was definitely neglecting by being completely present with a client there. And so the joke was my phone calls were ridiculously long. The conversation with the clients were ridiculously long, but they loved us to a ridiculous amount.
Yeah. So you got to find that happy medium,
I
right?
did not have a medium. I went very far to the other extreme of just letting people talk to me. And that's a tough thing. My wife and I both have this this experience with people. It's like we'll be talking with some friends and we don't often get a chance to say what's going on sometimes. And that's not always good. A lot of times it's like, it feels kind of a bummer. Like there's a lot of stuff. I feel like people don't know who the heck we are. Sometimes they don't ask us questions. We just heard their whole life story. But then we realize, that's its own gift in some ways if people feel like sharing something like that. And we are engaging enough with them to be able to draw that out. I had people tell me war stories in that front office, clients that had never told their experience about a combat scene they had in Vietnam or something horrible. I had grown men crying sitting in front of there. I was like seriously evaluating whether or not I should go into a career in counseling at one point. I did not know. It was like, but it was amazing. I love hearing people's stories. And I think they recognized that it was genuine.
Well, that's a talent and a skill. And for some people, it's got to be practice to get there, which is having someone say that I felt heard, not just, because there's listening and there's hearing. And I think that that's a big thing that people miss is just tuning out the world and being present with people. I had the pleasure. Oh my gosh, I'm a huge follower of Ed Milet.
Yeah,
and
we saw him. He was Vision. Yes, he did great.
And we got to, we had the pleasure of sponsoring. And so I got green room tickets and I got to go meet him.
Neat.
And I don't know if you've read his book, The Power of One More, but we have a lot in common. And he has impacted me greatly on some of the things that he's said and spoken on. And so I'm not a fangirl like that freaks out when I mean, it's not like I've met famous people a lot, but I don't envision myself being that person who like just panics. But I was so nervous to meet him.
Interesting.
And I'm telling you, when we walked up and I got to meet, like, hug him, shake his hand, stand next to him, he was like, and you can't tell. That's one thing you should talk about on one of your episodes is communicating virtually is the eye contact. Like I have to remind myself to look here at the camera, but I'm looking down here at where I see you, but the camera is right there. So I don't know if you can tell, but when he was with me, he was like this, like his eyes were just like, and there's
not
something
in a creepy
that
way,
happens.
in a good way.
No, in a very good, like, I'm Ed Milet, and you are the most important person in the world at this very
so good.
moment.
Love it.
And so, oh gosh.
That's great.
Super impactful. Look, I'm getting like, let's transition it into the auto repair shop. Because I can like talk about that Ed Milet and just get totally distracted off on a whole new thing.
Yeah.
I remember when we had our shop, and I keep saying like 10 or 15 years ago, but it's really been like 20 years ago.
It's like permanently in how it first was when you made the transition.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I remember Brian leading the effort in, we have to communicate better, right? The back has to talk to the front better. The front has to talk to the back better. And I don't know if this was a coaching group. I don't know where this came from. But we only did this one day, and you only have to do it one day. But we had a no speaking day. Like you can't talk. Everything had to be like written, recorded. And the whole point was to drive home the importance of communication, because you leave things out. When you're writing, you leave things out when you're talking. And it was like everything. And it was just to show how important writing down everything was. And that was a mistake that we didn't even know we were making, right? It was just leaving things out. And so we went with a no speaking day, and it was crazy. But Can you think of any major communication faux pas, communication mistakes that are made in the shop?
Yeah. So you were saying a no speaking day is like, wow, there were lots of days in the family business where we weren't speaking to each other.
That's fair.
It was
Not
not
that kind.
not quite as deliberate as your method.
Yeah.
The joke that I've heard with family businesses, a lot of people probably relate with this, is every dispute is passionate. But the reality is it was the passion. It
Yeah.
was our mistake. The passion of which we believe something wasn't always well justified, other than this sense of like, we've always been raised with this sense of the business will one day be yours kind of an attitude. And that does not lend itself always to the proper degree of humility that you would need to have in an upbringing. And so I look back at our family business days, myself, very specifically myself, as some of the most horrific examples of communication and some of the most horrific mistakes, the vulgarity and obscenities, all one thing, but anger, communicating from a position of anger and frustration. And we could unpack for 15 more years how 20 years in a family business can stack a lot of wounds and a lot of frustration. But ultimately, it's your reaction that I very slowly learned.
Yeah.
It's you can only control your reaction to things, and I didn't have control of my reaction, and that dictated that everything everyone starts responding to is our positions of anger, and you're reacting to somebody's reaction at that point, and it's a spiral. It's just a complete spiral to total dysfunction of communication. And it's a terrible thing when it happens, and it's very difficult to get out of. Fortunately, a strong element of love, genuine love in the family. We could leave it at the shop, like, oh, I hate you, leave the door, and so then we're at Christmas dinners. Love you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Probably totally unhealthy in all kinds of other ways. But
right. All kinds of dysfunction in that. That's so funny.
it's ridiculous. Yep. But no, we like that. And I can't wait to have like my brother as a guest on the show. We didn't have, there were some years where we communicated terribly with each other through some of the most beautiful years of our lives, with our kids being little and growing up too. And our kids are all super close. Their cousins are tight. And that's a testimony to me and my brother recognizing always like dispute here, never here. It's tight boundaries. But no, we were just bad at communicating our whole point. We didn't have a business coach in those days. There was scarcity behind some of the concerns and fears, and that accelerated the passion. All the things that I would ever recommend anyone needing a business coach for today, we should have had. It actually would have helped us a tremendous amount very early.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you don't know.
Yeah.
And then when you realize it, it's like all the lights just got turned on. So
Yeah.
I just
it was my whole
recorded-
world, Kim. Yeah.
Yeah.
That place was my whole world. That's all we knew was that world.
Yeah.
The industry was still very small to us then.
For sure. Yeah. And it still is in so many ways, because by choice, people don't reach out. They
Correct.
don't, maybe they don't know that there are people out there to help them, but it's because they're not looking. Right. A quick Google search and the whole industry opens wide open.
Karma was a big instrument in that too. That was a big game changer for me here in the first podcast. Of other people, I had similar struggles. It was awesome. We're not alone.
And it often blows my mind when, so we have our own Facebook group and people join that group, and I'm like neurotic about who I let in the group.
Good.
Like I'm super mama bear protective, and if they don't answer the questions, then I go look at their profile and I'm like, who are you? Do you belong in here? Like, why do you want in here? And I'm always expecting to see that we have 70 friends in common. And the number of people that join our Facebook group because Facebook recommended it, and I look at their profile and they are not following any other group. They're not following any other relative company in the industry or coaching group. We have no friends in common. I'm like, whoa, they're on the island. They're on the island by themselves. They're not connected. So I get so excited when those people join our Facebook group. So that's
nice.
Such good stuff out there.
Nah.
Okay, so here's something I'm terrible at. And I try so hard. And this comes from Dale Carnegie, right? And I don't know if you said this while we were recording or if this was before when we were goofing off. But in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which, by the way, if you have not listened to the podcast, gosh, it's been a little while back, where I was talking to Kendall from A1 Automotive in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, Kendall Warnock. That book changed his life. Like he will cry talking about this book. So this is my go-to. If you're watching on YouTube or video, you'll see that I'm holding up the How to Win Friends and Influence People book. This is my go-to graduation gift for young people. And I know most of them just put it on their shelf. My son has it. And the funny thing, oh my gosh, he calls me not long ago and he's sitting back and he's telling me the story about how I'm constantly telling him, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. You got to read this book. 21 years old, you know, in the military, he's going to be an officer in 2 years. Like, you have to read this book. Well, you know, like most kids don't listen to their parents, but when someone else comes in and says the same thing, suddenly their eyes are huge. So his roommate, another cadet, his roommate was talking to him about that book. Well, he was face down talking about the book while Peyton was sitting over here, and Peyton leaned over and picked the book up on his shelf and opens it and is looking like he's reading it when his cadet friend looks up and Peyton's holding the book, but he still hasn't read it. He still hasn't read it. I don't
Everyone
think.
I talked to about that book that has read it always said, I wish I would have read it sooner. I'm the same way. I only picked it up a few years ago, and
he's going to read it. He's going to read it, and then he's going to say, Mom, wish I'd read this a long time ago. But in the book, he says that a person's name is the sweetest and most important sound in any language. All right. Brian is getting really good at this. I noticed it at an event recently, and it blew my mind so much that I had to talk to him. I had to ask him, wait, well, how did you do that? Do you have tips to help people remember someone's name? You do. Of course you do.
Yeah. Well, so yes. But I also have tips to help people remember your name as an individual, which is, I consider this almost a more important thing in networking these days, because it's all digital now. We come into a in-person space. You don't look like your profile picture on Facebook, and you go and act like you know the person, and that's the only context you know them in. And it's like, that doesn't help. And the name tags are flipped around, so you can't read them, all these sort of things. Brian, I know, is good at this. Chris is also very good at this. And I think that'll make some great tips. But my tips for people is, like, if you want people to be able to know your name, make sure your name tag's visible. Raise it up a little bit. I always tie it a little bit higher, so it's higher up instead of on my stomach.
Yep.
And I actually will deliberately wear a similar outfit that I would have on a public presence on my videos. This blue shirt I actually have more than one, by the way. But it's little like tricks like that to help people know. Yeah. And the hair is also the signature brand. But that's something I actually do, not for me. It's to make it easier for other people, because I personally suck at this, remembering people's name. They're in a different context all the time, and they've changed their facial hair, but in the year it's been since I've been in a physical place with them again, right? And that's very difficult. I think there's something broken in my brain some days where I can't recognize a face. And that burns me up. I actually end up feeling anxious about that. And I know, and I've talked to enough people, that is one of their most uncomfortable things about networking. And then you do the awkward dance of, hey, you, or hey, man, or hey, dude.
Well, Brian and I have an agreement, because I was given the name Queen of Connections. Like, you know, if you get a nickname as a kid, you can't shake it. I tried shaking it, and I finally just said, you just got to accept it and move on. So people will come up to me all the time. Hey, Kim. And I'm like, hi, how are you? So Brian knows that if
Yeah.
I don't introduce them immediately, it's because I don't either remember their name or I don't know this person or
Terrible
whatever.
feeling. And it's universal.
It-
Everyone feels this all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
So he knows to immediately interject and say, "Hey, I'm Kim's husband, Brian Walker," right? And then they're going to say, "Oh, I'm Craig O'Neill," you know. And
Yep.
so, oh man, it's so painful, but
It's so important though. And you
is.
described something else there too, is doing that introduction. You know, one of my other inspirations, Eric Ziegler, technical trainer, has great hair. And he's one of those guys that will go through a real effort, but I think it's easy for him. He's a very good connector as well. I remember the first time I was going to Vision I was with Autoflow at the time, and we were on a shoestring budget, brand new. I was like employee number 4 or 5, and I had to get to Vision. So I said, "Oh, Chris, I'll drive down and see Eric." Eric invited me to ride with him the other half of the way. So 6 hours to Peoria, Illinois, from Grand Rapids, Michigan, to meet up with Eric Ziegler. We did he had to do a remote programming job, so he's a mobile technician as well. We did a ride along with him. Another friend, Mike Presotto, was with us as well. And I forget how long it was, like 9 hours. I don't know, from Peoria, Illinois to Overland Park. It was a long car ride with Eric and me and Mike chatting, though it went really quick.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation. Never stopped. Eric has the gift of gab as well. But then Eric constantly is introducing people. Constantly doing that, and it's such a beautiful thing to be pulled into a network by a friend. And I always try to say, like, I love that title that you have too, and I've seen you do this. Connect with the people, especially the people who are new in those environments, especially the people who have not networked before. It is the most important thing. Chris taught us this too. There's several books on this. Being a good connector is one of the best things you can do to impact someone else's life. Have you met so-and-so? Right? And there it is.
It's so true because, you know, like he said, leave someone feeling better. And when you tell someone, "Oh, I have someone I really want you to meet. Y'all are going to really hit it off. Here's why, blah, blah, blah." And you connect them. It's, and you're forever cemented in their head. People are regularly saying, "Hey, you're the one that introduced me to this person," or whatever. And it's just,
they became such an important person in this, on it goes. It's just beautiful. Yep. That's the most fun thing to be a part of.
right.
You have nothing to gain from it yourself.
Yeah.
At all. You're just literally introducing someone, and it can be the most impactful thing. And
It's easy.
It's so easy.
It
should be everyone's challenge whenever we're at an industry event, is to bring someone in that has not been, and introduce them so that they become known. Make sure you bring good people.
Yeah.
But
here's somebody I know you got to meet. And then they're like, "Why did you introduce me to that person?" Not that. Well, you know what's not easy is hard conversations. So I have this amazing front porch that the Lord has blessed us with. And I just love my front porch sitting, like every true Southern woman.
Nice.
And I was sitting on my porch recently, like this was within the last week. And I was talking to someone who is struggling with something. And this did not come from Kim. I said it, but I don't know what, like, it's such a great one-liner. Cause when I said it, I was like, "Oh, that's really good." And she said, "Oh, that was really," like, it hit me. It hit her. And I was just encouraging her, but I said, it just rolled right out. I said, "You are one hard conversation away from peace."
It is really good.
I was super proud. I was like, whoa. I remember like doing that, and she was like the same. And that same morning, so we call it a stand-up meeting. We all, in our team, we all come together first thing in the morning just to share one thing we're grateful for and what's our top priority for the day. Like, it's really just a get together. And for me, I'm looking to see who's not themselves this morning, like who needs a little something extra. And anyway, so my grateful was, "Hey, I just had this conversation on my porch this morning, and I said this," and it just became part of the conversation. And that has prompted multiple hard conversations. And so I'm just curious, what do you have to say about either how do you get into a hard conversation that you know you have to have and you've just been putting it off? Or maybe you find yourself in a hard conversation. How do you get out, or how do you redirect it, or what do you do with that? Maybe you need to sit in
Mhm.
it and have it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Just what do you
hard
think?
conversation is such a deep topic. It's a good question too, Kim. I think it's a fun one to explore. And I'm only just I feel like in my communication and leadership journey, just to the point where I feel I can navigate the hard conversations, especially in a career setting. That's where most of us have them, especially our audience. I know in shops and dealing with clients and customer service. Let's just
Mhm.
be clear. There's some hard conversations in that. I'm actually going to have a guest on the show soon about this topic as well. And there's a principle of it's actually a well-known principle, but his approach to it is really beautiful. But APAC, acknowledge, probe, answer, confirm, and that breaking that model down is like acknowledging someone is so important in that part of the conversation. I think it's the first thing that you have to get very good at. Been in the airport. I've been late getting to the gate because of the late connection flight, and I'm huffing and puffing to the gate, and I need help finding where this thing is and getting home, and I'm huffing and puffing. I get to the counter and I need help. And the lady says, first thing she says to me is, calm down. I'm not mad. Mind you, I'm just out of breath from running. It's like, calm down. It's like, I turn around and go to the other counter just across the terminal there. I need help. I said, okay, what's the matter? I
Yeah.
understand you need help. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, great. We're going to have an easy conversation. It's not even hard anymore.
Yeah.
Little
Right.
things like that. Those sort of strategies kind of, you need to work on them. But then there's other kinds of hard conversations where you're the one that has to tell someone something, they don't want to hear.
Mhm.
And for most of us, that's giving feedback to another person that needs to have it.
Mhm.
Like Chris, master feedback giver.
Yeah.
You've seen him do some of his evaluations in the Toastmaster
Mhm.
Club. I am still learning from him on this to be able to give feedback in a way that's not critical, but is properly critical in the way it has to be in order to nudge somebody. I think, Kim, I think it was you recommended a book a while ago. It was, I forget the author's name, but Radical Candor.
Oh yeah, it's right back there. It is
Yeah, the
right
yellow
back
one,
there.
right? Yeah,
I think.
I think so. Or the blue. I don't know. I can't
Uh,
remember. Yeah, but
no.
no, it is
Anyway, it is
such a good
yellow,
one.
but I already moved it to the other shelf.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
so good.
They have a podcast too.
Yes. Yep. And
Hmm.
it's just such a great concept. A lot of times we just avoid. My wife and I
Yeah.
rarely argue, rarely ever. And we know that eventually we're irritating each other to some
It's gonna
level.
come.
Yeah, it will. And it's usually something ignorant I've done, to be very clear.
Right.
But this is the reality. By confronting things and being really honest and transparent
Yeah.
with that, you avoid a lot of stuff. But I've had to have hard conversations with employees, had to have hard
Hmm.
conversations with people that aren't with us anymore, and a number of times. But yeah, it's a
Well, and even
deep
with
subject.
clients, like I've given that
Yeah.
book to, well, I think all three of these books I've given to our CSMs, our customer success managers, because just that's how life goes.
Hey, your clients, auto repair shops. Our clients, auto repair shops. I've been
Hmm.
the auto repair shop as well, as have you, which gives us a unique perspective, and we understand not the
Yeah.
easiest clients in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think we are, and
Ooh,
we are not.
you're gonna do like a whole series on having hard
Oh,
conversations, because
there's
you could
actually
talk about that for
there's so much I want to break down. It's such a big topic. It would take probably an entire month of focusing on hard conversations.
Mhm.
We should probably break it up across multiple months because no one
No
wants to have hard
kidding.
conversations every week.
That's true. That's very true. Very true.
I hate hard conversations. I'll be very clear. I am not the hard conversation kind of guy. I like, oh,
Yeah,
great, a hard conversation. I want to jump in that. I want nice conversation. I want to talk about Michigan and how it's awesome and why our
for
weather's
sure.
just the best. That's where I want to go. But nope.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's one other hard thing that I think you really wanted to talk about.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's going to be a whole nother, again, I'm just giving, I hope you're taking notes, because
Oh yeah.
you've got like 10 episodes that you could do just
They
from the little,
constantly keep coming up. Yeah.
kind of scratching the surface here. But
Yeah.
it's when your co-speaker suddenly bails on you.
My goodness. Yeah, there will be an episode on this topic. And so like this is the thing is we were at the Mars conference with the Institute. That was in Ogden, Utah. Beautiful place.
Mhm.
Again, I could just talk about how beautiful that place is forever. But
Yeah.
you, of all people, didn't have your co-star with you.
No.
No. And
Oh,
not only that, he was
mhm.
going through a procedure at the moment
I
that
know.
you were doing your presentation. And this will happen to anyone who's ever had to speak.
Yep.
It's just until it happens, you just can't anticipate it. But you had to function on that. And I couldn't,
Yeah.
you did so good. I have a question for you on that topic before I mention something on mine. It's like, when that sort of thing happens, doesn't that remove a little bit of the nerves from everything else? It almost like there's this crisis of a magnitude that's real,
Mhm.
and there's all the smallness of my anxiety that was going into the presentation that is now very small compared to this bigger thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely very true. You have to, it's funny when sometimes people say compartmentalizing things
Mhm.
is not a good thing.
Hmm.
But in that moment, compartmentalizing it was the best thing
Hmm.
for me because it was such a huge distraction. So for people that don't know, because Brian's totally open about this, we're in Louisiana. We had this whole, by the way, I think you probably know this part. We were driving. We were going to drive from Louisiana to Ogden, Utah in our RV. It was going to be this big, huge, epic trip.
Wow.
And everybody knows we're trip takers and RVers. And we had this whole thing planned out. And literally that same week, Monday, we were supposed to leave on Wednesday. On Monday, Brian's AFib just was out of control. And the
Hmm.
doctor said, you need a cardioversion, which is where you're laying on the hospital bed and they shock your heart, put the paddles on, like the stuff you see in the movies. And
Mhm.
he'd already done that one other time, I think. Or was this his first time? This might have been his first time. Anyway, AFib's totally under control right now. Thank God. But suddenly, now I have to book a ticket. I have to pack everything onto a plane. I have to, all this stuff. And most people are like, what do you mean your husband was having a heart
I
issue
know.
and you went? Anyway,
But
I
he was
will,
encouraging you to go,
he
and the
basically
doctor had it
forced
under
me.
control. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
the doctor, the cardiologist is a close friend of ours.
yep.
And he like said everything and then he walked out. And I looked at Brian and I said, I'm not going to Utah. And he said, yes, you are. And I said, no, I'm not. And he leans out the door and instead of saying, Dr. Koffler, he says, hey, Will, come here. So Will comes back in there and Brian lays it out. And Will looks at me with this look on his face of, you're really stupid. This is the most simple, common procedure on the planet. Everything is fine.
There's nothing for you to do here, right?
Yeah, there's there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do. This is going to be like 3 minutes or 20 seconds and you need to go. So there I went and we didn't know like what time was this going to happen. And then I find out like, I don't know, the night before, literally the moment I'm taking the stage was when he was laying on the, so
Yeah.
for me in that moment, it was compartmentalize it, package it up. Although I did talk about it, I mentioned it because I wanted
Yes.
people to know because
Yep.
I feel like I love teaching. I love teaching. I was created for that. And I know when I'm off and I didn't want to be off, but I wanted to be vulnerable and just be real and say, if I'm off today, here's why.
Hmm.
And the grace that people gave. And I was able to just wrap it up, put it aside, and focus on what I was doing. And thankfully, it wasn't a 4-hour class. It was like 45 minutes. So it was
Yeah,
not,
that does help.
but yeah,
Yes.
those things happen. Or, people
No,
get a stomach virus and can't teach with you. And now you're on your own. Like stuff happens.
I had it was honestly, it was a privilege to be there and to witness this moment. As you've been a member of the Toastmaster Club, and I'd seen you present a number of times in other places. I know you are absolutely meant to be a teacher and are a teacher. And knowing this story ahead of time and seeing what you're about to, I found it just totally inspiring. To be very clear, like it was very impressive to me how transparent you were and how that I was observing the audience. They were totally endeared to you. This is your nature anyway. You and Brian are beloved. But can they love you even more? Oh yes, absolutely they can. And that's why like being transparent in those moments is so precious in that way. But you still convey it, that there was an importance to what you were teaching that came through. Like Brian affirmed you and sent you here, even during this time. This message means something. Let's go deliver it still. And that's huge. Good job is all I was saying. This is just amazing. And it was a legitimately good job. This isn't just something we tell people. In Toastmasters, we give you a grow and a glow.
That's awesome. That's fun. Thank you for that.
No, this question came up because, as you know, and you were again an inspiration to me at STX this year in Nashville. It was day one, and these are 4-hour classes. Me and Chris had 3 of them to do together. So a big year for us there, and we love all the classes that we're doing. And I get the call. I think it's Chris after he's done working out for the morning. Yes. He's gonna say, okay, yeah, Craig, we're gonna meet up and we're gonna go through our slides. Is what I thought the call was gonna be, but it was actually, hey, Craig, I got to go home. My mother-in-law just passed away. Yeah. It's like, what? No, first and foremost, I'm still like thinking, I'm still in Craig's brain, slow to catch up sometimes. It's like, let me grab my computer. I'll meet you in the lobby. And it's like, why the hell do I need my computer?
Yeah.
But meet him in the lobby. And it's like, as I'm walking up there, it's like, no, he actually has to go. He has to go. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be gone for this whole event. Mm-hmm. Oh dear. So good thing this is 5 years after sending me to Toastmasters versus 5 minutes, because all right, I'm going to do the STX classes by myself. And that's the thing. And the conversation is like, when I said, Chris, I felt so glad I could say this to him. I've got this, man. I got this. Let's get you to the airport. And that's exactly what we did.
Well, and you just gave him so much. Obviously, he had the confidence in you, but it was, you're able to give your co-person such relief that they don't have to worry about it.
Right.
They don't have to be concerned with it. And you're seasoned. You are a seasoned speaker.
Well, thank goodness, because he brought me into the space all these years gradually. But I think it was Super Saturday, Pennsylvania, the first one I ever did with him. I think he gave me like 2 slides to present, and I had it was an ugly slide. I should dig it up. I bet I still have it buried somewhere. And it's like so much content in 2 slides because I only had 2 slides.
Yeah,
and it's just. It's comical now as I look back on it. Totally different space though, but it's because he put me into a position where I could consistently learn with him, alongside him. And like that paid off for him big time too, I hope. And like, this is not me propping me up, but like, I'm so glad that started way earlier, because it would have been a complete, what else would have happened if this wasn't our story on this. It's really an interesting thing. So I had a blog a while ago, and I'll wrap this point up with this for now. It was like it was a science fiction book I was reading, and one of the characters in there, that's what I love about fiction, is you can have characters take stupid ideas and pronounce them as fact, and then you can shoot it down easier when it's a fictional character. So this guy's arguing with the main character on there. Says, all you have, he says, is that shout into the wind. That's all you have in this world. It's like your Hail Mary, I guess, and you just go out and snuffed. That isn't it. No, like Bob Greenwood was my coach. I hired him in my last few years of this. He's a wonderful man, and I echo him consistently. And I think that's one of the ways that I can pay tribute to the guys like Bob. And so it's like, you don't just have that shout in the wind. You should be really thinking about where that echo is going to come from. It won't be just your voice. And when Chris starts developing me, that's great. Now the question is like, who do I get to develop next? And how can I make an impact on there? And so that the words that we have, they are short-lived. We have a short life. And there's moments like what Chris went through there that always will be there to remind us of that. And that's why, hey, focusing on the communication skills, focusing on helping another person develop theirs is so precious.
Yeah, that's so
You never know. Yeah, and I'll have stories about the classes that I had to do all by myself too.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many times that things just don't go the way maybe you left
No,
your
no.
clicker and now
Yep.
it could be little bitty things that really in the grand scheme of things mean
Always
nothing.
small. Yep.
But
Because it's
can
not
throw
about
off.
you. It's not about you. It's about your audience. It's
That's
about
it.
the people you're meeting with. Bob Greenwood, I'm echoing him, and I don't even try to anymore. It just happens. I remember he's dressed up in a suit and tie
Yep.
in front of the group. And he says, you know why I'm dressed this way? He's telling this group of shop owners on a Saturday morning in
Yeah.
February, Michigan, we're wearing our hoodie sweatshirts and our Snap-on jacket uniform, right? And it's not for me. It's out of respect for the people that I'm meeting with. You're worth it.
He's one, when you think about who's a great communicator, like he just had this presence about him. I love that. I actually was doing research, preparing for talking with you today, and we've been talking for an hour, so I'm gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, we do.
But I just want to share this one last thing. I was preparing for this, and when I was listening, I think episode 3, maybe, where you were somewhere you talked about
can't
opening
remember.
acts.
Yes, that's
It's
episode 3.
you're talking about opening acts, and it hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I was speaking locally to this professional women's group. They asked me to come be like a special speaker to their Women's Day Out thing. And I show up for the day and I sit at their special table, for like the sponsors and the speakers and all of this. And I realize, I'm sure you'll know who this is. I don't know. I mean, I realize that I have to speak immediately following Irma Thomas. Do you know who Irma Thomas is?
Don't know who Irma Thomas is.
Wildly famous singer from New Orleans.
Well, that's why I don't know her. I can't remember singers' names. I'm that guy.
Yeah. Blues, jazzy, like just this amazing woman from New Orleans. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So one thought becomes
Awesome.
5, becomes 10, becomes, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to speak after Irma Thomas? Like, it's Irma Thomas. She's going to sing, she's going to blow, and then here I come, and I start spiraling.
Interesting.
And praying and panicking and praying some more and breathing and trying to do all the things that you do to get yourself under control, when, thank God, she got stuck on the causeway, the bridge from New Orleans to the North Shore, and was in traffic and wasn't going to arrive on time. So the lady comes over and she's so upset. She's terrified to ask me. And she leans down and she whispers, this is first thing in the morning. Like, they're just having breakfast. She was like, would it be horrible if I asked you to be our opening speaker? Like, will you start the day? And I'm like, are you kidding? Yes. That would make I do not want to go after Irma Thomas, please.
She didn't say with a song.
No, not with a song. And so I was able to just shift instantly, get rid of all the negativity and say, get it together. You get to go now, and then you can relax for the rest of the day, and all this stuff. But
It's a great
there's
spot to
so
be.
much about the mental part of speaking that can derail you or set you on a path of success.
Yeah.
And it's about controlling all that. So so many.
It happens every time we start
things
measuring
happen.
ourselves against someone else, especially then. And it's one of the biggest traps I find myself in all the time. But that's the thing. It's like once you can get, the easiest way out is think about the audience and the thing that you want to deliver to the person that you don't know in there that's going to have an impact that you may never know.
Well, my approach was honesty and transparency. And I made a whole joke out of guess what? I'm the opener. Now I'm opening for Irma Thomas. So it was just this
brilliant.
whole fun.
Oh yeah. So that's
thing.
why that episode 3 thing connected with
Yeah.
you for sure then.
I had to go look it up. I went to look up, and I actually tagged you in my Facebook post because I shared it this morning. All right.
Nice.
So for time's sake, I should skip this part. We never do this, but I just love when podcast people do. I'm going to do a speed round.
Okay.
Like, I'm just going to throw some things your way, and you just got to answer super quick.
Okay. This is like table topics and Toastmasters. I'm ready.
Yeah, but you don't have a minute. You just got like a second.
I just give you
All
a
right.
word. Yeah, or
Yep,
something.
exactly.
First thing that comes to mind, basically.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this one. Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Book in hand or audible?
Oh, book in hand.
Favorite musician?
Favorite musician, Cat Stevens.
Oh, okay.
Folk.
That one surprised me. Longest ruck you've ever done?
Ooh, it's going to be a marathon here later in August, but right now, 15 miles.
Yeah. Email inbox, delete or never delete?
Archive everything.
Okay. You're my kind of person. Brian's at like 20,000 in his, he's like, you can search for everything. It's so easy. Money being no issue. Dream vehicle.
It's a motorcycle. I don't know which one.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Is your
Or an
bed made
airplane.
right now?
Oh, no. No.
And lastly, best communication quote in the world.
Ooh, so I just had it up earlier. Carl Kraus. No ideas, but the ability to express them. That's a journalist. That one's fresh on the mind right now. So that one's coming out. No
And that's
ideas,
how-
but the ability
that's-
to express them.
That's how we're going to leave this, except do you have anything else that you want to say?
Hey, check out Speak Up, Effective Communication, the new show on the Aftermarket Radio Network, and check out all the other shows on the Aftermarket Radio Network, like this one. And thank you so much, Kim, for having me. This has been a blast. I think we could have done this another hour and had a great time.
I know. I told you. I told you. Oh, man. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast on the Aftermarket Radio Network. There are, as you just heard, so many other great shows, including the new one from Craig O'Neill called Speak Up. And you can find them all at aftermarketradionetwork.com or on your favorite podcast listening apps like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, many others. Tune in next week. Until then, go fill those bays.